I'm Luke. I'm 35 years old. And at a glittering Christmas charity gala, my own mother publicly told my 10-year-old daughter that she wasn't her real granddaughter and to get out. Before I tell you about the explosive moment that followed, the moment that tore my family apart and finally set me free, do me a favor and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It helps to know I'm not alone in this. The phone buzzed against the polished oak of the conference table, a vibration I felt deep in my gut. A single text message. From my daughter, Lily. I glanced down, expecting a string of heart emojis or a question about when I'd be home. Instead, I saw 5 words that stopped my world from turning. Grandma said I'm not her granddaughter. Can we leave? The air left my lungs in a single silent gasp. The client presentation I was in the middle of, the multi-million-dollar architectural project on the screen, it all just dissolved into meaningless noise. I stood up so abruptly my chair scraped against the floor. I mumbled an apology, something about a family emergency, and ran. I didn't wait for a response. The drive from the city back to my parents' grand prison of a house in Aspen felt like an eternity. Every red light was a personal insult. Every slow driver a monster. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and a cold, hard knot of fury was tightening in my stomach. This was the one thing I had feared. The one person I had sworn to protect. I found her curled up on the window seat in her room, a tiny ball of misery, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I didn't say a word. I just scooped her into my arms, held her tight, and let her cry. That's all a father can do sometimes. Just be there. Just be the wall that shields them from the world, even when the monsters are inside the house. After she cried herself to sleep in my arms, I laid her gently in bed and pulled the covers up to her chin. Then, I walked out of the room, closed the door, and the grief that had held me together shattered, replaced by a rage so pure and cold it felt like ice in my veins. I took out my phone. One text message to my lawyer. Handle them all. That was it. That night, my phone didn't stop buzzing. 29 missed calls from my mother, Eleanor. A flood of frantic texts from my brother, Daniel. I ignored them all. Finally, a single, desperate message from her. Please don't do this, Luke. Please. I looked at the message. The plea from the woman who had just broken my daughter's heart. My reply was short. My fingers were steady. You'd better start praying. But to understand how we got here, how a Christmas invitation turned into all-out war, we have to go back a few weeks. It all started, as these things so often do, with a lie wrapped in a pretty bow. It started with a phone call from my mother, inviting me and Lily to Aspen for a real family Christmas. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was sketching out a new design, the sun slanting through my office window, and for a moment, I was actually peaceful. Then her name flashed on the screen, Eleanor. My mother. My first instinct, as always, was to ignore it. To let it go to voicemail where she would leave a clipped, vaguely disapproving message about something I'd forgotten to do. But something made me answer. Luke, darling. Her voice was like honey laced with arsenic, a sweetness that always had a bitter aftertaste. I was just thinking, it's been far too long. Richard and I would love for you and Lily to come to Aspen for Christmas this year. The whole family will be here. It's time we were all together. I leaned back in my chair, the pencil still in my hand. Silence stretched between us. In my mind, I was a kid again, standing in the doorway of my father's study. I was holding a drawing I'd done, a detailed sketch of a futuristic city. I was so proud of it. I showed it to her. She glanced at it, her lips thinning into that familiar line of disapproval. That's nice, Luke, she'd said, her eyes already drifting toward the hallway where my older brother, Daniel, was showing off his latest football trophy. But don't you think you should focus on something more practical? Your brother is going to be a CEO one day. What are you going to be? A dreamer. I remembered being 17, getting my acceptance letter to one of the top architecture schools in the country. I ran to tell them. My father, Richard, grunted from behind his newspaper. My mother looked at the letter. Well, she said, folding it neatly, I suppose it's better than nothing. Daniel's pre-law program at his Ivy League school is setting him up for a real future. Make sure you don't embarrass us, Luke. Daniel was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. He was the heir to the family's invisible throne, the one who reflected my mother's ambition back at her. I was the artistic one, the sensitive one, the one who married a woman, my beautiful late wife Anna, who my mother deemed not from the right background. After Anna passed away, it only got worse. I was a single father, an architect, a man who built things from scratch. In her world, I was a failure, a walking reminder of a life she couldn't control or mold to her liking. Luke, are you there? Her voice snapped me back to the present. I'm here, I said, my voice flat. Why now, Mom? What do you mean, why now? She asked, a fake innocence in her tone. It's Christmas. It's for Lily. The dear girl needs to be around her family. Her cousins, Leo and Mia, are so excited to see her. Lily, that was her masterstroke. She knew I'd do anything for my daughter. I looked at a picture on my desk. Me and Lily at the beach, her face bright with laughter, a gap-toothed smile that could light up the world. Anna had taken that picture a week before the accident. My wife had always warned me about them. Don't let them dim your light, Luke, she used to say. Or Lily's. I had tried. For years I kept my distance. Polite phone calls, holiday cards. I built a life for me and Lily far away from their suffocating influence. But Lily was 10 now. She was starting to ask questions. She saw her friends with their grandparents and asked why hers never visited. Her innocent questions were like tiny daggers in my heart. Maybe my mother had changed. Maybe, just maybe, this was an olive branch. Okay, I heard myself say, the word tasting like a mistake before it even left my mouth. Okay, Mom, we'll be there. Wonderful, she chirped, the triumph in her voice unmistakable. I'll have the guest rooms prepared. I hung up the phone and stared at the empty sketch pad. The peace I'd felt just minutes before was gone, replaced by a familiar, churning anxiety. I was walking back into the lion's den, but I was doing it for Lily, and for her, I'd face any beast. I just hoped this time I wouldn't get eaten alive. That evening I made spaghetti, Lily's favorite. As she expertly twirled pasta onto her fork, I watched her, trying to find the right words. She was the best of me, the best of Anna. She had her mother's bright, curious eyes and my stubborn determination. Guess what, sweetie? I began, trying to keep my tone light. I spoke to Grandma Eleanor today. Lily's fork clattered onto her plate. Her eyes widened. Really? Really? And she invited us to spend Christmas with them in Aspen. With Grandpa Richard, and Uncle Daniel and everyone. For a second, she just stared at me, processing the information. Then, a slow smile spread across her face. A dawn of pure, unadulterated joy. A real Christmas? With family? She whispered, as if the words themselves were magical. A real Christmas, I confirmed, my heart aching with a mixture of love and dread. She let out a squeal and launched herself out of her chair and into my arms, hugging me so tightly I could barely breathe. Thank you, Daddy. This is the best news ever. I can't wait. We can build a snowman, and drink hot chocolate, and maybe Grandma will teach me how to bake her famous cookies. I hugged her back, burying my face in her hair. Her innocence was so fragile, so precious. I had to protect it. Maybe she will, sweetie. Maybe she will. From that moment on, our apartment was filled with a buzz of excitement that was entirely Lily-driven. She made lists. She planned outfits. She watched videos of Aspen online, her face pressed close to the screen, oohing and ahhing at the snow-covered mountains. She was living in a fantasy, a Hallmark movie of her own creation, and I didn't have the heart to tell her that the reality was likely to be a drama directed by a tyrant. One afternoon, about a week before our trip, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by colorful beads, string, and tiny silver charms. She was hunched over her work, her tongue sticking out in concentration. What's all this? I asked, ruffling her hair. It's a secret, she said, not looking up. It's a present. For Grandma. I pulled up a chair beside her. She was carefully threading small, pearlescent beads onto a sturdy cord. In the center, she had placed a small silver charm of a bird in flight. It's beautiful, Lily Bug, I said, and I meant it. I want her to like me, she said quietly, her voice small. You said that she can be a little serious sometimes. I thought if I made her something, she'd see that I want to be her friend, that I want to be her granddaughter. I felt a sharp pang in my chest. This wasn't just a gift. This was an offering. A plea for acceptance from a 10-year-old girl who deserved nothing but love. She held it up when she was done, a delicate, shimmering bracelet. It was simple, handmade, and filled with more love and hope than anything money could ever buy. She's going to love it, I lied, forcing a smile. Lily beamed, her faith in the world, in the goodness of family, absolute and unshakable. She carefully placed the bracelet in a small, velvet-lined box, tying it with a silver ribbon. She treated it like it was the crown jewels. As I watched her, my resolve hardened. I was making this trip for her. I would endure the cutting remarks, the cold shoulders, the constant, draining feeling of not being good enough. I would be a buffer between her and them. I would stand in the gap and take every hit meant for her. I would let her have her perfect, movie-style Christmas, even if it was all a beautiful, fragile illusion. I owed her that much. I owed Anna that much. I just had no idea how high the cost of that illusion would be. The weekend before we were scheduled to leave for Aspen, I met my best friend, Ben, for a beer. Ben and I had been through everything together since college. He'd been the best man at my wedding, the first person I called after the accident. He was more of a brother to me than my actual brother, and he was the only person who knew the unvarnished truth about my family. "You're doing what?" he asked, nearly choking on his drink after I told him the plan. He set his glass down with a thud. "Luke, are you insane? After all these years, you're just going to walk back into that viper's nest? With Lily?" "It's for Lily," I said, repeating the mantra I'd been telling myself for weeks. "She wants a family, Ben. She deserves to know her grandparents. She deserves to be happy." He shot back, his eyes serious. "And that woman has never brought you a single moment of happiness. She's a puppeteer, and she's trying to get her strings back on you. Why now? After all this time, you don't find that suspicious?" "I don't know. Maybe she's softening in her old age," I said, knowing how weak it sounded. Ben just shook his head, a sad smile on his face. "People like her don't soften, Luke. They just sharpen their knives. Don't forget who your mother is. She's a narcissist who sees people as objects to be arranged for her own benefit. Daniel is her prized possession. You were the one that got away. And Lily is your daughter, not hers. In her eyes, that makes her a threat." His words were harsh, but they rang with truth. He was saying everything my gut was screaming at me. "Just be careful," he said, his tone softening. "Keep your eyes open. And promise me the second she pulls any of her usual crap, you grab Lily and you get the hell out of there. Don't wait. Don't make excuses for her. Just go." "I promise," I said. The promise felt heavy, a weight in my chest. The day after my talk with Ben, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I was waiting for a call from a contractor. "Luke, dear, it's your Aunt Carol, my mother's younger sister." Her voice was syrupy sweet, a trait they both shared. She was my mother's lady-in-waiting, her primary source of gossip and information. "Oh, hi, Aunt Carol. It's been a while." "I know, and it's just wonderful to hear that you and that sweet little girl of yours are coming for Christmas. Eleanor is just over the moon. We're all so thrilled." "Yeah, we're looking forward to it," I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. "I was just calling to see if there's anything special Lily might need. Any allergies? Does she have a favorite color? We want everything to be just perfect for her." On the surface, it was a thoughtful gesture. But I knew better. This was reconnaissance. She was gathering data for Eleanor. Every question was a subtle probe, a way to find a weakness, a preference they could later use or mock. "She's a 10-year-old girl, Carol," I said, keeping my voice even. She's not that complicated. She likes snow and hot chocolate. We'll be fine. Of course, she said, her tone never wavering. Well, we just can't wait to see you both. It's going to be the best Christmas ever. I hung up the phone with a feeling of deep unease. Ben's warning echoed in my ears. Aunt Carol's call felt like a scout being sent out before an army's advance. They weren't preparing for a family reunion. They were preparing for a performance. And I was willingly walking myself and my daughter right onto their stage. My final anchor of hope was that I was wrong. That this time, just this once, family would actually mean family. The drive up the winding mountain road to my parents' Aspen home was beautiful. Snow clung to the pine trees like powdered sugar, and the air was crisp and clean. Lily was practically bouncing in her seat, her face pressed against the window. "Look, Daddy, it's just like a postcard," she exclaimed. I smiled, her excitement a temporary balm on my frayed nerves. "It sure is, sweetie." As we pulled up the long, heated driveway to the sprawling log and stone mansion, the front door swung open. My mother, Eleanor, stood framed in the doorway, a picture of calculated elegance in a cashmere sweater and perfectly tailored slacks. My father, Richard, stood a step behind her, a ghost in his own home, his expression as neutral and unreadable as ever. "You're here," Eleanor said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. It was a statement, not a welcome. She bent down stiffly toward Lily. "My, you've gotten tall. I made you something, Grandma," Lily said, her voice filled with hope as she held out the small, ribbon-tied box. Eleanor took it, her manicured fingers barely touching Lily's. "How thoughtful," she said, without even looking at it. She placed the box on a nearby hall table, among the mail and car keys, as if it were a piece of junk mail. I saw Lily's face fall for just a fraction of a second before she pasted on a brave smile. My own smile felt frozen on my face. Come in, you're letting the cold in," Eleanor said, turning and walking back into the house. We followed them into the great room, where a fire roared in a massive stone fireplace. My brother, Daniel, was there with his wife, Sarah, and their 2 kids, 12-year-old Leo and 8-year-old Mia. "Luke, good to see you, man," Daniel said, giving me a brisk, one-armed hug that felt more like a shove. He was the golden child, all right, tanned, fit, wearing a watch that cost more than my car. He grinned down at Lily. "Hey there, sport. Ready for a real mountain Christmas?" Sarah gave me a warmer, more genuine smile. "It's so good to see you both, Luke. Lily, you look beautiful." I'd always liked Sarah. She seemed out of place in my family, like a wildflower that had accidentally sprouted in a meticulously manicured, but sterile garden. "Dinner is almost ready," Eleanor announced, clapping her hands together. "Go wash up. We're eating in the formal dining room tonight." 15 minutes later, we walked into the dining room. The long mahogany table was a work of art. Fine china, polished silver, crystal glasses, and a stunning centerpiece of holly and pine cones. But as I looked closer, the familiar knot in my stomach tightened. The table was set for 6. Eleanor, Richard, Daniel, Sarah, Leo, and Mia. There was no room for me. There was no room for my daughter. I stood there, frozen, Lily's small hand in mine. Eleanor noticed my hesitation. She waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, don't just stand there. We didn't know exactly when you'd arrive, so we didn't set your places. Richard, go get 2 more chairs from the kitchen." It was such a blatant, transparent lie. She had invited us. She knew the exact day, the approximate time. This wasn't an oversight. It was a message, delivered with chilling precision on our very first night. "You are afterthoughts. You do not belong here." My father scurried off to do her bidding without a word, without even looking at me. Daniel was already seated, laughing at something Leo said. Sarah shot me a look, a quick, fleeting expression of apology and pity. I squeezed Lily's hand. "It's okay, sweetie. Let's go help Grandpa." But it wasn't okay. It was the first shot fired in a war I hadn't even wanted to fight. And the worst part? I had willingly brought my daughter onto the battlefield. I looked at the unopened gift box on the hall table. It seemed so small, so naive, just like the hope I had allowed myself to feel. The next few days were a masterclass in psychological warfare, executed with a series of passive-aggressive comments and calculated slights that were as sharp and painful as invisible needles. On our first morning, Lily came downstairs for breakfast wearing a bright red sweater I'd bought her. She loved it because it was the color of Santa's suit. Eleanor looked up from her coffee, her eyes scanning Lily from head to toe. "Red is such a loud color, don't you think, dear?" she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "It rather washes you out." Mia now, she looks lovely in pastels. Mia, of course, was wearing a pale pink dress that made her look like a porcelain doll. Lily's face fell, and she spent the rest of the morning subconsciously tugging at her sweater, trying to make herself smaller. Later that day, we were all in the living room. I was telling a story about a recent camping trip Lily and I had taken, how she'd bravely faced a raccoon trying to steal our marshmallows. "You let her sleep outside? In a tent?" Eleanor interrupted, aghast. "Luke, really? It's no wonder she's so rambunctious. A girl needs structure, discipline, not to be raised like a wild animal." She then turned to Leo and praised him for 5 minutes about his impeccable table manners. Every word was a carefully aimed dart. Every compliment for her other grandchildren was a backhanded slap to Lily. I found myself constantly running interference, trying to deflect the blows, to translate the poison into something palatable. "Grandma just has old-fashioned ideas, sweetie," I'd say. "Your sweater is beautiful. Camping made you strong and independent," I'd whisper. "I'm so proud of you." But I could see the toll it was taking. The bright, bubbly girl who had arrived in Aspen was slowly deflating. She grew quieter, more watchful. She stopped offering stories and opinions and instead hovered near me, her hand often seeking mine for reassurance. The worst moment came on the second afternoon. We were all gathered by the fireplace. Lily, summoning a burst of courage, retrieved her gift from the hall table where it had remained, untouched. She walked over to my mother, her small hands holding the box as if it were a sacred treasure. "Grandma, I wanted to give you this now," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Eleanor looked at the box, then at Lily, her expression unreadable. She took it and slowly untied the ribbon. She lifted the lid. For a moment, she just stared at the delicate, handmade bracelet inside. The silver bird charm gleamed in the firelight. "It's a friendship bracelet," Lily explained, her voice barely a whisper. "So we can be friends." A tense silence filled the room. Daniel looked uncomfortable. My father stared intently into the fire. Sarah watched, her face etched with worry. Eleanor closed the lid. She didn't put the bracelet on. She didn't even say thank you. She simply placed the box on the mantelpiece, high above the fire. "That's sweet of you, dear," she said, her voice cool and distant. "Now, who wants more hot chocolate? Mia, come help Grandma." And just like that, the moment was over. Lily's heartfelt offering, her plea for connection, was dismissed and literally put on a shelf. She stood there for a moment, looking up at the box, her eyes wide with hurt and confusion. Then she turned and walked silently back to me, her small body radiating defeat. She curled up beside me on the couch and didn't say another word for the rest of the afternoon. Later that evening, as I was walking down the hall, Sarah intercepted me. She glanced around nervously before speaking in a low voice. "Luke, I'm so sorry," she whispered, "about all of this. It's not your fault, Sarah." She wrung her hands. "You need to be careful. It's worse than you think. This isn't just about her being difficult." She looked me straight in the eye, her own filled with a strange urgency. "Just watch yourself. There are things you don't know." Before I could ask what she meant, she heard Daniel calling her name and hurried away, leaving me alone in the hallway with a cold sense of dread. The invisible needles were one thing, but Sarah's warning hinted at something far more sinister, a deeper poison running through the veins of this family. The next day was Christmas Eve. The tension in the house was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Lily had retreated into a shell, speaking only when spoken to and spending most of her time reading in a corner of the great room, as far away from Eleanor as possible. My phone rang around noon. It was my firm's top client, a real estate mogul with a notoriously difficult project on a tight deadline. "Luke, we have a major problem." My partner's voice was strained. "The city just rejected the revised zoning application. The primary investor is threatening to pull his funding. We need an emergency meeting right now. You're the only one he'll listen to." I swore under my breath. "Now? Mark, it's Christmas Eve. I'm in Aspen with my family." "I know. I am so sorry. But if we don't salvage this, the entire project goes under. That's 100 jobs, Luke. And a huge blow to the firm's reputation. We need you." My mind raced. The client's office was in Denver, a 2-hour drive each way. With the meeting, I'd be gone for at least 5, maybe 6 hours. Leaving Lily here, alone, in this snake pit. The thought was unbearable. I found her in her room, packing her small suitcase. "What are you doing, sweetie?" I asked, my heart sinking. "I want to go home," she said, not looking at me. "I don't like it here. Grandma doesn't like me." I sat on the bed beside her, pulling her into a hug. "Oh, Lilybug, I'm so sorry. I know this isn't what you expected." "It's okay, Daddy," she mumbled into my shoulder. "Can we please just go?" And then I had to tell her. I had to explain that I had an emergency, that I had to leave for a few hours, but that I'd be back as fast as I could. I promised her we'd reevaluate everything when I returned. "You're leaving me here?" she asked, her eyes wide with panic. "It'll only be for a little while," I said, hating myself with every word. "You can stay in your room, watch a movie. I'll be back before you know it. I promise." I didn't want to go. Every instinct screamed at me to grab my daughter, throw our bags in the car, and just drive until Aspen was a distant memory. But I thought about the 100 people whose jobs were on the line. I thought about my responsibilities. It was a conflict between my duty as a professional and my duty as a father. In that moment, I made the wrong choice. I chose my job. It's a decision that will haunt me for the rest of my life. I gave her one last hug, told her I loved her, and walked out the door, her scared little face etched in my memory. The meeting was a tense, grueling affair, but we managed to calm the investor and work out a new strategy. I was relieved, but the feeling was overshadowed by a gnawing anxiety about Lily. The second the meeting ended, I was out the door. As I was getting into my car, my phone vibrated. It was the text, the 5 words that changed everything. "Grandma said I'm not her granddaughter. Can we leave?" The blood drained from my face. The world narrowed to the glowing screen in my hand. She had waited. Eleanor had waited until I was gone, until my daughter was completely alone and vulnerable, to deliver her final, most cruel blow. The beast had finally shown its true fangs, and I had left my little girl alone in the cage with it. I don't remember the drive back to Aspen. It was a blur of speed and fury. I pushed the car as fast as it would go, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my bones ached. All I could see was Lily's terrified face. All I could hear was the echo of my own stupid promise. "I'll be back before you know it." I slammed the car into park and burst through the front door. The house was filled with the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses. They were in the dining room having a festive Christmas Eve dinner. As I stormed past the doorway, I saw them all seated around the table, a perfect family portrait. But Lily's chair was empty. I took the stairs 2 at a time. Her door was closed. I pushed it open gently. Lily! She was curled up on the window seat, just as I'd imagined, staring out at the falling snow. She didn't turn when I came in. "Hey, sweetie, I'm back," I said, my voice thick with emotion. She finally looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed and empty. The spark that was so uniquely her was gone. It was like someone had turned off a light inside her. "I want to go home now, Daddy," she whispered. I sat down beside her and pulled her onto my lap. She felt so small, so fragile. "Okay, Bug, we will. But first, can you tell me what happened?" Her story came out in quiet, halting sobs. "After I'd left, She'd felt lonely and decided to go downstairs, hoping to watch a Christmas movie. She found everyone in the living room. She said hello. No one answered. My mother was there, directing my father on how to hang a garland. I asked if I could help. Lily cried, burying her face in my chest. I just wanted to help. She told me Eleanor had turned to her, her face like stone. And then she'd said the words that had been lurking beneath the surface this whole time. You are not my granddaughter. You are the daughter of a woman who was beneath this family, and you are the daughter of a man who was a constant disappointment. You do not belong here. Get out of my sight. My blood ran cold. To say that to any child is monstrous. To say it to your own flesh and blood, to a little girl whose only crime was to want your love, it was unforgivable. Lily sobbed in my arms. Why does she hate me so much, Daddy? What did I do wrong? Nothing, I said, my voice a raw whisper. You did nothing wrong, Lilybug. This is not about you. This is about her. She's broken inside. I held her until her breathing evened out and she drifted into an exhausted sleep. As I sat there in the dark, watching the snow fall, something inside me shifted. The part of me that had always craved their approval, that had hoped for a reconciliation, died. It withered and turned to ash. And from that ash, something new and hard and dangerous grew in its place. I gently laid Lily in bed. I took out my phone, my fingers moving with a calm, chilling certainty. I opened the voice memo app. Then I woke her up gently. Sweetie, I need you to do something very hard for me, I whispered. I need you to tell me one more time what Grandma said. Exactly what she said. Can you do that? Her eyes filled with tears again, but she nodded bravely. Through her sobs, she repeated the horrible words, her child's voice cracking with pain. I recorded every single syllable. It was the cruelest thing I'd ever had to do, but it was also necessary. I now had my weapon, and I was going to burn their whole world to the ground with it. After Lily was asleep again, I walked downstairs. The sounds of dinner had faded. I could hear them in the great room, the low murmur of conversation, the occasional burst of laughter. It was like nothing had happened, like they hadn't just shattered a little girl's heart. I walked past them, ignoring the questioning look from Sarah and the dismissive glance from my mother. I went straight to the bar and poured myself a stiff drink. I needed it. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so profound it was almost paralyzing. Yelling at them here in private would be pointless. Eleanor would deny it. My father would stay silent. And Daniel would side with her, as he always did. They would close ranks, gaslight me, and turn it all around to make it my fault. No, a private confrontation was what they expected. It was what they were prepared for. I needed a different stage, a bigger one. My eyes fell on a thick, embossed invitation sitting on the coffee table. You are cordially invited to the Aspen Children's Foundation Annual Charity Gala, hosted by Eleanor and Richard Palmer. Tomorrow night, Christmas Day, the highlight of the Aspen social calendar. An evening where my mother would stand on a stage and speak about the importance of family, community, and compassion, all while basking in the adulation of her wealthy friends. It was perfect. It was a stage built on hypocrisy, and I was about to bring the whole production crashing down. My mind started to work, the architect in me seeing the structure of the problem and designing a solution. I needed leverage. I needed allies. I went back upstairs and made 2 calls. The first was to Ben. They crossed the line, I said, my voice low and hard. It's happening. I need you to be ready. I didn't have to explain. He knew. The second call was to my lawyer. I explained the situation, the history of emotional abuse, the blatant favoritism, and now this. He was a shark, the best in his field, specializing in complex family estate disputes. Do you have any proof of this? He asked. I have a 10-year-old witness with a broken heart, I said. And I have a plan. That's when I sent him the text. Handle them all. It was a command. I wanted him to start digging. Look into the family trust, the will, the foundation's finances, everything. My mother's power was built on 2 things, her social standing and her money. I was going to take both. I looked at the guest list for the gala. Near the top was a name that made my plan click into place. Mr. Harrison, the CEO of Harrison Holdings. He was the city's biggest developer, a man whose respect my mother desperately craved. He was also my firm's biggest potential client. I had been courting him for a massive project for months. My mother thought she was hosting a party. She had no idea she was actually setting the stage for her own downfall. I would not let her get away with what she did to my daughter. The war was coming, and I was finally ready to fight. The ballroom at the mountain resort was dripping with wealth. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over hundreds of guests in tuxedos and evening gowns. A string quartet played softly in the corner. It was a scene of perfect, civilized elegance. And it was all a lie. I walked in with Lily holding my hand. She was wearing a simple, deep blue velvet dress, and she looked like a little princess, though her eyes were still shadowed with sadness. We had made a deal. She would be brave for me for a little while, and then we would leave this place forever. My family was at a table near the front. They looked up as we approached, surprise flickering across their faces. They had clearly expected me to have already run home with my tail between my legs. "Luke," my mother said, her voice tight. A hostess smile plastered on her face for the benefit of those watching. "I'm surprised to see you. I thought you and Lily would be resting. We wouldn't miss your big night for the world, Mom," I said, my voice deceptively calm. I pulled out a chair for Lily at the table right next to mine, a silent act of defiance. We belong here. Dinner was an exercise in extreme tension. I could feel the questioning stares of my brother, the nervous glances from Sarah, the cold fury radiating from my mother. I ignored them all, focusing my attention on Lily, making sure she ate, whispering jokes in her ear to make her smile. Finally, the moment came. The dinner plates were cleared, and the host of the evening, a local celebrity, took the stage. And now, he boomed. "It is my great honor to introduce the heart and soul of this foundation, a pillar of our community, the incredible Mrs. Eleanor Palmer." A wave of polite applause rippled through the room. My mother rose, regal and composed, and glided to the podium. She beamed at the crowd, soaking in their admiration. Thank you all," she began, her voice filled with practiced sincerity. "It warms my heart to see so many generous people gathered here tonight. Because what are we if not a community? What are we if not one big family, here to lift each other up?" She went on, spinning a beautiful web of words about the sanctity of childhood, the importance of love, the moral duty to protect the innocent. I felt a visceral wave of nausea. "Family," she said, her voice swelling with emotion as she reached her crescendo, "is the bedrock of it all. It is our first and most important trust. It is where we learn compassion, where we are taught our values, where we feel safe and unconditionally loved." That was my cue. As the applause started, I stood up. I gently lifted a sleepy Lily into my arms, and I started walking towards the stage. A hush fell over the room. People turned in their seats, murmuring, confused. The string quartet faltered and went silent. Every eye in the ballroom was on me. I saw the panic flash in my mother's eyes. My father looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. I walked up the small set of stairs and stood right next to her at the podium. I leaned toward the microphone, my heart pounding a steady, determined rhythm against my ribs. "Excuse me," I said, my voice clear and amplified, echoing through the silent room. "My mother has been speaking so eloquently about the importance of family." I looked directly at her, my voice dropping to an icy calm. I couldn't agree more. She tried to grab the microphone, but I held it fast. Her perfect smile was gone, replaced by a mask of barely controlled rage. The show was over. The real story was about to begin. I held Lily a little closer, her small body a warm, solid presence against the chill of the moment. I could feel her trembling, but she held on tight. She was my courage. I turned my attention back to the silent, watching crowd. I saw Mr. Harrison at his table, his expression one of rapt, intense curiosity. Before we continue raising money to help the children of this community, I said, my voice ringing with a clarity I didn't know I possessed, I think it's important for everyone to hear a story about a child right here in this family. A story about what happens when the values my mother just spoke of are nothing more than empty words for a stage. Eleanor hissed at me under her breath, "Luke, stop this right now. You are making a scene. You are embarrassing this family." "Embarrassment," I said, my voice still amplified by the microphone. "Let's talk about embarrassment. Let's talk about pain." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. With a few taps, I connected it to the ballroom sound system. A moment of feedback squealed through the speakers, making everyone flinch. And then there was a new sound. The sound of my daughter's voice, small and broken, filled the vast, silent room. I asked if I could help. I just wanted to help. Her recorded sobs echoed off the crystal chandeliers. Every person in that room was frozen, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning horror. I watched my mother. The color drained from her face, leaving her skin a pasty, sickly white. My father stared at his plate as if it held the secrets to the universe. And then came the final, damning words from my daughter's recording. She said, "You are not my granddaughter. You do not belong here. Get out of my sight." A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. The silence that followed was absolute, heavier and more profound than any sound. It was the sound of a reputation being shattered. The sound of a carefully constructed world crumbling to dust. I stopped the recording. I looked directly at Mr. Harrison. His face was a mask of cold fury. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at Eleanor, his eyes filled with utter contempt. My mother, cornered and exposed, finally snapped. The elegant facade cracked, revealing the ugly, snarling beast beneath. "He's lying!" she shrieked into the microphone, trying to snatch it from my hand. "That girl has been nothing but trouble since she arrived. He is a failed son, a disappointment who is trying to ruin me." And then, my brother Daniel, the golden child, ever the dutiful son, made the mistake that sealed their fate. He jumped to his feet, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "He's the disgrace," Daniel shouted, his voice shaking with rage, loud enough for the front tables to hear clearly. "Mom did the right thing. That's why she had me sign the papers. That's why she made me sign him out of his part of the family inheritance." He froze, his eyes wide, realizing what he'd just said. He had meant to defend her, but in his blind loyalty, he had just confessed to a conspiracy, to the financial and emotional disownment they had executed in secret. He had admitted, in a room full of the city's most influential people, that this was never about a family squabble. It was about power, control, and money. The murmurs in the room erupted into a roar of shocked conversation. I looked at my mother one last time. She stood there, exposed, defeated. Her life's work of lies turned to ashes around her. I didn't need to say another word. I turned my back on her, on all of them. Cradling my daughter in my arms, I walked off that stage, through the stunned crowd, and out of the ballroom. I didn't look back. I was finally, truly walking away. And this time, I was taking nothing with me but my daughter, my dignity, and the sweet, satisfying sound of their world burning down behind me. The cold night air hit us as we stepped out of the resort's grand entrance. Felt clean, pure. Felt like freedom. Lily was quiet in my arms, her face buried in my neck. She wasn't crying anymore. It was as if she had purged all the pain and was now just empty. "Is it over, Daddy?" she whispered. "Yes, sweetie," I said, my voice thick. "It's over now." We reached the car at the far end of the parking lot. As I was buckling Lily into her seat, a figure hurried toward us out of the shadows. For a second, I tensed, ready for another confrontation. But it was Sarah. Her face was pale, and she was wrapping a shawl tightly around herself, shivering from the cold or from nerves. I couldn't tell. "Luke, wait," she said, her voice breathless. "Sarah, I don't want to talk about this," I said, my tone sharper than I intended. "No, I know. I'm not here to make excuses for them, she said quickly. She glanced back toward the hotel, then pushed a thick manila envelope into my hands. I can't do this anymore. I can't be a part of this poison. I looked down at the envelope. It was heavy. What is this? It's everything, she said, her eyes meeting mine, filled with a mixture of fear and resolve. I've been making copies for months. Bank statements from the foundation, emails, a different version of your grandfather's will that Eleanor has kept hidden. She's been manipulating the trust funds for years, moving money around, using the foundation as her personal piggy bank. The inheritance Daniel was talking about? She didn't just cut you out. She may have stolen what was rightfully yours to begin with. Your lawyer will know what to do with this. I was stunned into silence. I had gone in there tonight to fight for my daughter's dignity. I had no idea the rot went this deep. Sarah's warning in the hallway suddenly made perfect, sickening sense. Why, Sarah? I asked. Why are you doing this? A sad smile touched her lips. Because I have a son and a daughter, too. And I don't want them to grow up to be like Daniel. Or like her. They deserve better. And so do you. She looked at Lily, asleep in her car seat. So does she. She gave my arm a quick squeeze. Get out of here, Luke. Don't ever look back. And with that, she turned and disappeared back into the darkness. I stood there for a moment, the heavy envelope in my hand feeling like both a weapon and a key. A weapon to finish what I had started, and a key to a future free from their lies. I got in the car, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, the glittering resort grew smaller and smaller until it was just another light in the vast, dark mountain night. The narrator's voice becomes warm, directly addressing the audience. This was the moment that changed everything, the moment I finally took back control of my life. Thank you for staying with me this far, you're amazing. If you could, please help me by liking this video and commenting with a 1 down below, just so I know you've journeyed with me to this point. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone else. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to continue sharing the rest of this journey. We didn't go back to the house. Couldn't. I drove down the mountain and found a quiet hotel for the night. The first thing I did was email pictures of every document in Sarah's envelope to my lawyer. His reply was almost immediate. I'll get to work. Don't talk to them. Don't answer any calls. The next few days were a blur of news reports and phone calls, the ones I was allowed to answer. The Aspen Charity Gala incident became the scandal of the season. News travels fast in small, wealthy towns. My mother, Eleanor Palmer, the patron saint of orphan children, was now a social pariah. The foundation's board called an emergency meeting. Faced with the evidence from Sarah's documents, which my lawyer had anonymously leaked to them, they demanded her immediate resignation. She was out, disgraced. Her carefully crafted kingdom had crumbled overnight. Of course, the calls from my family started coming. I ignored Eleanor's. I ignored my father's. But one evening, my brother Daniel's name flashed on the screen, and on a grim impulse, I answered. What do you want, Daniel? What do I want? He sputtered, his voice a mixture of fury and disbelief. You've destroyed us. Do you have any idea what you've done? Mom is a wreck. Her friends won't even talk to her. Harrison Holdings just pulled out of a major deal with my firm. This has ruined our reputation. I almost laughed. It was still all about them. Their reputation. Their money. Their feelings. You're right, Daniel, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I have ruined your reputation, the one you built on lies and cruelty. You stood by and watched her abuse my daughter. You were complicit in trying to steal my inheritance. You didn't just watch it happen, you signed the papers. So don't you dare call me and whine about your reputation. You have no idea what real loss is. I hung up before he could respond. The last call came a day later. It was from my father, Richard. I answered, morbidly curious to hear what excuse he would have. His voice was different. It was weak, trembling. Luke, he began. Son, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. Sorry for what, Dad? I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. Sorry for what she did? Or sorry that she finally got caught? There was a long silence on the line. I could hear him breathing, a shallow, ragged sound. I'm sorry for all of it, he finally whispered. For years, I stood by. I didn't stand up for you. Or for Anna. Or for little Lily. I was a coward. I know that. I was just easier to agree with your mother. It was easier than fighting. It was the most honest thing he had ever said to me. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of pity for this weak, broken man. But pity wasn't enough. Not anymore. It was easier for you, Dad, I said, the finality of it all settling in my heart. But it wasn't easier for me. And it certainly wasn't easier for my daughter. Your silence was a choice. You chose her over your own son, over your own granddaughter. I have to live with that. Now you have to live with it, too. I ended the call. And with that, I cut the final thread. The break was clean. It was complete. There was nothing left but silence. The 6 months that followed were like waking up from a long, feverish dream. Without the constant weight of my family's disapproval, I felt lighter. I could breathe again. My lawyer handled the fallout. The evidence Sarah provided was irrefutable. The old will from my grandfather was reinstated, and the portion of the estate Eleanor had tried to hide was restored to me. It wasn't a staggering fortune, but it was significant, and more importantly, it was a victory. It was justice. I sold my old house, the one that was too big and full of ghosts of a life I tried to build to please others. I bought a smaller place for me and Lily, a modern house with huge windows nestled in a grove of pine trees just outside the city. It was a home we chose together, a place filled with light and laughter, not shadows and secrets. The biggest change came from an unexpected place. A month after the gala, I got a call from Mr. Harrison's office. Mr. Harrison was impressed by your courage, Mr. Palmer, his assistant said, and by your portfolio. He'd like to meet to discuss the downtown waterfront project. It was the project of a lifetime, the one I had been chasing for years, the one Mark, my workplace rival, had been trying to sabotage. I walked into that meeting not as the son of Eleanor Palmer, but as Luke Palmer, architect and father. I didn't talk about my family. I talked about my vision, about creating spaces that brought people together, that fostered community, that felt like home. I got the contract. It was a vindication that tasted sweeter than any revenge. My success wasn't something they had given me or allowed me to have. It was something I had earned on my own terms, built not just on my talent but on my integrity. I put a portion of the inheritance aside for Lily's college fund, ensuring her future was secure, built on a foundation I had laid, not one I had been given. I even got the promotion at my firm that I'd been working towards for so long. Life was, for the first time, truly my own. But the real healing happened in the small moments. It was in teaching Lily how to ride her new bike down our quiet street. It was in pancake breakfasts on Sunday mornings. It was in watching her rediscover her bright, confident self, no longer looking over her shoulder for disapproval. One sunny Saturday, we were working in the garden, planting a small patch of wildflowers. Lily was covered in dirt, a smudge on her nose, and she was chattering away about a book she was reading. She paused, looking at our new home, the sun reflecting off the large glass windows. I like it here, Daddy, she said, her voice soft. Me too, Lilybug, I said, my heart full. Me too. It feels safe. That one word hit me harder than any insult ever had. Safe. It was the one thing her grandparents' mansion, with all its wealth and grandeur, had never been. And it was the one thing I would spend the rest of my life making sure our home always was. We were building a new life, a new legacy, one quiet, happy day at a time. The past was finally starting to feel like what it was. Another country, a place I had left long ago and had no desire to ever visit again. One crisp autumn afternoon, a letter arrived. It was postmarked from a small town a few states away that I didn't recognize. The return address just had a name. Sarah. I opened it with a sense of trepidation. Lily was at a friend's house, and the house was quiet. I sat at my kitchen table and read the letter that would provide the final, missing piece of the puzzle. Dear Luke, I hope this letter finds you and Lily well. I saw the news about your project with Harrison Holdings. Congratulations. No one deserves it more. I'm writing because I felt I owed you a final explanation. And perhaps an apology for my years of silence. As you might have guessed, Daniel and I are no longer together. The events at Christmas were the final straw for me. I couldn't raise my children in that house under that influence any longer. The divorce was messy, but it was necessary. We've moved and we're starting over. For years, I watched how your mother treated you, and I never understood the depth of her animosity. It was more than just you not being the son she wanted. It was deeper, more personal. After I left, your father and I had one last, honest conversation. He was a broken man, full of regrets, and he told me the truth. The real reason Eleanor hated your choices, and by extension you, it was about Anna. I stopped reading, my breath catching in my throat. Anna. Your mother was pathologically jealous of her. Not just because Anna was beautiful and kind, but because you loved her so completely. In Eleanor's twisted mind, Anna had succeeded where she had failed. She had captured your heart, your loyalty, in a way Eleanor, with all her control and manipulation, never could. When you married Anna, you weren't just choosing a wife. You were choosing a different kind of life, a different definition of family. You were choosing love over duty, and that was a betrayal she could never forgive. When Anna passed away, I think a part of your mother was relieved. She thought she could finally get you back, mold you into the son she always wanted. But then there was Lily. Lily, who looked so much like her mother. Lily, who is a living, breathing reminder of the woman who stole you from her. Every time Eleanor looked at your daughter, she didn't see her grandchild. She saw Anna's victory. She saw her own failure. It's sick, and it's tragic. It doesn't excuse anything she did, not for a second. But I thought you deserved to know. Her cruelty wasn't about you being a disappointment. It was about her being consumed by a jealousy so profound that she would rather destroy you than see you happy with the memory of a woman she could never compete with. I wish you all the best, Luke. You broke the cycle. Be happy. Yours, Sarah. I folded the letter, my hands trembling slightly. It was a revelation that was both shocking and, in a strange way, liberating. All those years, I had thought her treatment of me was because I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough, ambitious enough, I wasn't Daniel. I had carried that burden of inadequacy my whole life. But it was never about me. It was about her own twisted insecurities, her own pathetic jealousy. I wasn't a failed son. I was just the son of a woman incapable of genuine love. The knowledge didn't erase the scars, but it changed their meaning. They were no longer marks of my failure, but relics of a battle I had survived. A battle I had won. Sarah was right. The cycle was broken, and I was finally completely free. Our first Christmas in the new house was quiet, and it was perfect. There were no grand dinners, no tense conversations, no expectations. Just me, Lily, a slightly lopsided Christmas tree, and a mountain of cookies we'd baked together, making a glorious mess of the kitchen. On Christmas morning, after all the presents were opened, I noticed Lily sitting by the window, looking out at the snow-covered pine trees. She was holding the delicate, beaded bracelet she had made all those months ago, the one my mother had tossed aside. "You kept it," I said softly, sitting down beside her. She nodded, running her thumb over the small silver bird charm. "I decided to keep it for me," she said, her voice clear and confident in a way it hadn't been a year ago. "It's not a friendship bracelet anymore. It's my I am worthy bracelet. It reminds me that I deserve to be loved, no matter what." She looked up at me and smiled, her mother's smile, bright and full of life. "And I am loved, right?" I pulled her into a fierce hug, my throat tight with emotion. "More than anything in the entire universe, Lilybug. More than anything." I looked around our small, warm home. The fire was crackling. The smell of cinnamon and pine filled the air. It wasn't a palace in Aspen. There were no priceless antiques or formal dining rooms. But it was ours. It was a home built on a new foundation, one of trust, respect, and unconditional love. I finally understood. Family isn't about blood. It's not about obligation or last names. It's about who stands by you. It's about who shows up, who lifts you up, and who loves you not because of who they want you to be, but because of who you are. It's about the family you choose, the family you build. Looking at my daughter, my brave, resilient, wonderful daughter, I knew we had everything we would ever need. We had each other, and we were finally home. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it has touched you in some way. Have you ever had to face a similar situation in your own life? Please share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Your support means the world.